Welcome to Inside Startup Investing, the only podcast where you can invest in every guest. On this episode, I will be speaking with co-founder and CEO of Legion M, Jeff Annison. Legion M is not only building a fan-owned media company with the mission of uniting 1 million fans to reinvent the way media gets made in the United States, but they are also a pioneer of the equity crowdfunding space. You see, since 2016, they have been on the cutting edge of raising capital from the crowd and building incredible community around their business. A few things that I want you to listen for in this episode are first, Legion M is quite literally building a movie studio like Warner Brothers or Disney, but from the ground up, funded by passionate movie fans that can drive decision-making in what content gets made and the success those companies go on to see. It challenges the entire status quo of the movie industry that's been dominated by mega companies that believe they have all the answers to what the American population wants to see. Second, Legion M isn't some gimmick. They've already raised tens of millions of dollars from 50,000 plus investors and deployed that capital both into unique films starring the likes of Nicolas Cage and Jason Sudeikis to actually fully producing films like the William Shatner documentary they recently put out. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, if you want to understand Legion M from a pure investment perspective, know this. They are investing in building out a library of high-quality intellectual property, or IP, that could be monetized for years to come, and their decision-making is being guided by their loyal legion of 50,000 investors who help them in identifying winning opportunities like my Dead Friend Zoe, which they have produced and will feature the likes of Morgan Freeman, which has won a ton of awards at this year's Sundance Film Festival. Put simply, this is a new age movie studio on the cutting edge of leveraging fan capital and fandom to create and build a stronger movie studio built for the 21st century. So with that, let's get on to the show and welcome Jeff. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm excited.
Oh, I'm excited too. I'm always excited. You're probably our most attended, or whatever right word there is, guest on this show. We've had you on many, many times throughout the years. And I personally, having been in this space since 2018 officially and really since the beginning of the market with my blog many years ago, you guys are really some of the pioneers of this industry, which I love. So first off, thanks for joining us. And second, for those who don't know you, Jeff, tell us a little bit about you and what you all are building at Legion M.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Legion M is as pure of an equity crowdfunding play as I think you'll ever find. And not only because of the fact that we were literally the first Reg CF to launch in the United States on what was it, May 16th, 2016, we launched on WeFunder. And but because of the fact that Legion M is a company that was completely predicated on the Jobs Act. Our whole thesis behind Legion M is we're a fan-owned movie studio. And if you look at our logo, the M with the bar over it is the Roman numeral for 1 million. Because we believe that an entertainment company that's owned by a large community, a legion of fans, 1 million fans, has incredible competitive advantages in what is a extremely competitive but also highly lucrative industry. And so like Legion M would not exist without equity crowdfunding, because what happened was Paul and my co-founder Paul and I were kicking around ideas, and we were familiar with the Jobs Act from a previous company that we were involved with, and we were looking at doing something in Hollywood. It's actually, the genesis was we were working with Seth Green and the guys over at Stupid Buddy Studios that do Robot Chicken. And we were going to do something with them. And what we recognized was that equity crowdfunding represented literally a once in a lifetime opportunity, this disruption, this change to securities laws that had been on the books since the Great Depression. And, I think there's obviously many industries where there's an impact, but I don't think that there's any where that impact could be quite as profound as film and television. So our goal is to unite fans. We want to unite 1 million fans to own the company, and we've grown to the point now where we are literally financing and producing and distributing our own films. And we think that if we can continue on the trajectory that we're on, someday nothing will be able to stop us.
Yeah, let's get into it a little bit. So first off, how much money have you raised to date? How many investors have partook? And then let's dive in. What are some of the key projects that's enabled you to invest in and start building out?
Yeah, great question. So we're just about to cross the 50,000 investor
Wow.
threshold. And that is, to be clear, that is 50,000 investors in Legion M, the studio. Starting about 2 years ago, we started opening up the opportunity for people also to invest directly in some of the films. So the way I describe it is, if you could go back in time, would you rather have invested in Walt Disney Studios or the movie Snow White, right? Both of them were happening at the nascent stage in the company's development. And so we offer both. And we've had two films so far. We're actually just about to announce our third, that have been either entirely or partially funded by fans. And so if you include that, it's probably a little bit closer to 24 million maybe that we've raised. If you're looking at just Legion M the studio, it's about 20 million. And like I said, about 50,000 unique investors. And we're just about to cross that threshold.
Incredible. Now, not only have you raised a whole bunch of money and built a rabid fan base of people who just seem to absolutely love everything about Legion M. I mean, people have Legion M tattoos, they have Legion M bumper stickers, they have stuff all over their house. I follow the Facebook page, and it's kind of unbelievable how engaged some of these folks are. But that's actually powered investing in, and like you said, building out a lot of different movie projects and media projects. Let's talk about some of them. What are some of the highlights?
Sure. Well, when we started off, and keep in mind, so when we launched back in 2016, Legion M was nothing more than an idea. It was like, hey, there's this new change to securities law, and we think that there's this opportunity. And we raised, with that Reg CF, we raised $1 million, which was the max at the time. And we used that. I mean, that's nothing in Hollywood money. Like, that's literally like nothing. And so what we started off was just making small investments in other people's projects. And the primary goal of that was not necessarily because we thought like, oh yeah, this is a great scalable business model, but we needed to level up. I mean, as you know, when you start a startup company, the fundamental challenge usually is not figuring out what is the big picture idea. It's figuring out how you get from zero to the point where you can execute on that big picture idea. That's the hard part. And so for us, we started off. And so the very first project that we were ever involved with was an Anne Hathaway movie called Colossal with Jason Sudeikis and Dan Stevens, and is a real gem. If nobody's seen it, it was Neon's first release. Neon is a distributor. They went on to distribute I, Tonya and Parasite, and has become a very large and well-regarded distributor in the space. But that was our first one. We invested in a Nicolas Cage movie called Mandy. This was like circa 2018. That has become like a total cult classic, as like just this batshit crazy dark movie that a lot of people like really love. Like, it's got total cult classic sort of status. And so again, in that case, we made an equity investment. We actually financed the Johan Johansson soundtrack, heavy metal soundtrack, that really powers that film. We partnered with Kevin Smith on the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and again, that was his project. We raised some money in that. And so all told, it's over a dozen films like that we've made small investments in, all in the independent film space. They're either ones that we made small investments with, or we partnered with them. Like, that's another thing that we did which was really innovative really early on, is because for most people, the value of adding Legion M as a partner is not the money that we bring, say $100,000 or a couple $100,000 back in those days, but the community behind us that we bring, and this idea of uniting fans. And so we had a number of people that gave us free equity in their project, or they gave us upside in exchange for attaching to it. And so those were all the sorts of things, though, that were the way we look at it is just a way to level up. It's kind of like putting one step in front of the other, or one brick on top of the next. But now we're at the point where we've had three. So our two biggest movies are yet to come out. The big three that we've done over the past couple of years, we did a William Shatner documentary, which was the first one to be completely financed by Legion M, and we produced it. and we distributed it. We own the rights of that movie in perpetuity, and we've got 1,200 individuals that invested directly in that project that get a portion of the royalties. We've got this concept, we call it fan first financing, where especially on that project, the fans get their money back before Legion M makes anything as producers on the film, and even before William Shatner makes anything for being involved with that film. And so that one was a big step for us, because that, getting into this place of where we own the rights to the movies, and these are now our projects that we're doing, as opposed to making strategic investments in other people's. So the two that are left that have not come out yet, the first one is slated to come out in early December, and it's called The Man in the White Van, and it's a true crime thriller. It's actually the origin story of kind of the trope of a man in a white van. It's about a real life serial killer back in the 70s, but it stars Sean Astin and Ali Larter and Breck Basinger and Madison Wolfe, and it's very well reviewed. I think it's currently 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a great, tense. It's a PG-13. It's not a horror movie. It's a thriller, but it's really powerful, and it's also, like I said, it's about a real person and a real story, and so there's a lot of impact there, and it's very responsibly done. To not glorify or promote the serial killer, but to really focus on the victims in the story and kind of like what you can do to avoid that. So that one, like I said, is coming out in December. And then our biggest one is My Dead Friend Zoe, which I know you're familiar with. But, that one stars Sonequa Martin Green and Natalie Morales, and these two young up-and-coming actors, Ed Harris and Morgan Freeman. If you don't, recognize the names of Sonequa and Natalie, if you look them up, you've probably seen them in something, because they're everybody obviously knows who Morgan Freeman and Ed Harris are. But that one, about 2/3 of it is financed by the Legion M community. This is another one that we allowed people to invest in directly. The other third is financed by professional movie investors, including, of all people, Travis Kelce, who is an investor in the project through a vehicle that he has. But that one came out at South by Southwest this past year. We won the audience award. It is also 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and is a deeply, deeply impactful film that I think a lot of people will really love. And that one is slated. We're partnered with Briarcliff on that one, and that one should release in early next year. I think February 28th is currently the date they've got it slated.
So you have a William Shatner documentary. You got this My Dead Friend Zoe movie, which looks like a really emotional and intense movie that I urge you to go learn more about it. I did invest a few bucks in that one, and I'm excited to see that come out. And then you have The Man in the White Van, which is kind of this thriller, all very different. How has the Legion M fan base impacted how you've decided to invest in these kind of varied projects that you have so far?
It's a really great question. I mean, at the end of the day, the Legion M community is the core of everything that we do. And I mean that literally. Like, I'm the president of the company, but I work for the shareholders. That is my job, is to represent their interests. And, that's not just because, we think that's the right thing to do. It's like, it's also, well, the smart thing to do, because the whole idea behind the company is that by having a legion of engaged fans, we create competitive advantages in the industry. And so the more engaged they are, the better. And so it really behooves us to make sure that we're doing what those people want. And so I think that Legion M's kind of like our origin started going after Comic-Con audiences and film festival audiences. And the idea behind that was, these are existing communities of people that already spend their time and money because they just love entertainment so much, and they love movies and all that sort of thing. But as we grow, we've expanded beyond that. And actually, one of the biggest projects, one of the biggest swings, I would say, on our slate is a project that, you know, is completely off of those radar. It's called Defiant, the story of Robert Smalls. And I'm curious, have you ever heard of Robert Smalls, or are you familiar with this
Only from the
project?
Legion M community.
Yeah, most people have never
Amazing
heard of
story.
Robert Smalls, but if you look him up, it's absolutely incredible. He was enslaved harbor pilot. That his job, you know, I don't know what you call it, but his task that he had to do as an enslaved man during was to move Confederate warships around the harbor during the Civil War. And it's really the story that starts off when one night he and the rest of the enslaved crew of the ship boarded a 140-foot Confederate warship and stole it. And they knew that if they could get to the mouth of the harbor, there was a Union blockade there, and they would be free. And they also knew that if they were captured, they would be tortured and made example of. And so it was this real high stakes thing where they had to pass, like, you know, 7 different Confederate checkpoints and know the secret signals and 140 Confederate cannons and all that sort of stuff. And so it starts off with this kind of like amazing heist sort of thing, which is just incredible. But the real story is that after that was done, Robert Smalls, the guy who led this, became a hero of the North. And, you know, the story was widely publicized. And he met with Abraham Lincoln and helped convince Lincoln to allow black soldiers to join the Union Army, which at the time was still a very controversial sort of thing. But a lot of historians credit for ending the Civil War. And he went on the road then and helped recruit, I think it was the first 5,000 black soldiers to join the Union Army. Then he went back into battle, and they made him a captain of the ship that he stole. And he fought in 17 battles, naval battles, for the Union Army. And eventually, and he was at Fort Sumter when the colors were struck at the end of the Civil War, and went on to become a congressperson and own a railroad and create a newspaper. And not only that, but he went back and he bought the mansion that he grew up on, the slave plantation, and he bought it and lived in it. And, you know, the kind of cherry on top of the whole thing is that, you know, at the end of the story, he's now this hugely successful senator. He's got a family of his own. He taught himself to read and has done all these amazing things. And the wife of his old slave master comes back to the house, and she's, you know, 80 something, and she's destitute, and she has dementia, and she has no money, and she thinks that she still lives there. And they took her in and took care of her until her dying day. I mean, it's an absolutely incredible story from start to finish about a truly remarkable American. And it's also a story that almost nobody knows of. And so that's what we're trying to change. And we've assembled this amazing team. We've got the guy that wrote The Princess and the Frog. Rob Edwards is his name. He also wrote for In Living Color and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He wrote Treasure Planet. You know, so he's got this wonderful take on it, on the story, and we've partnered. We've got Captain Small's great-great-grandson, you know, that is bringing that kind of element of like, yes, these are what our family knows, and the records that have been handed down from generation to generation. And we've got Marvin Jones, who plays Crondon, who plays in Black Lightning, and it's just this amazing group that we've pulled together to basically say, you know, everybody says, guys, look, we've had like, there's been, what is it? There's 3 Pitch Perfect movies. You know, there's like 11 Fast and Furious. Like, why has Hollywood never made a movie about this man? And that's
now correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this story initially brought up by someone in the Legion M community?
It was literally a meme like that, where it kind of just
group,
yeah,
right?
It was in that Facebook group. It was in that Facebook group that you mentioned.
I remember seeing it, and like people have pitched different ideas there, like put things like, how are we not talking about this? and I saw it 15, 20 times. Like, I feel like it kept coming
Yes,
back up.
it kept on coming up. It was one of those ones. And so what happened was, I mean, this is amazing. And this is, I think, what Legion M is all about is like you said, we get a lot of people pitching movies in there and ideas, and there's a lot that we've looked into, but this is one where it kept on coming up. And then somebody chimed in and said, I actually have a script about this. And it turned out that it was actually an old friend of David Baxter's. And so we're like, oh, well, hey, let's check it out. And it was a great script. And so this has entirely come from our community. And the hard part about this is that this is not a movie that Legion M could finance, because I mean, in order to do this right, it's probably a $75 million movie or more. And this is something that we need a studio to be able to finance. And so that's what we're doing. Those sorts of deals are very hard to get. And it's, I mean, there's a million stories out there and a million scripts and a million packages, but we've been working on this for years now. And the day that actually gets made into a movie will be like, that's just the ultimate for Legion M, because of the fact that this literally came from our community. And that's what Legion M is all about.
So now to take a step back for people, there's obviously the people who've invested in Legion M because they just love entertainment. They love movies. They love being a part of this community. You want to talk about building a community. You've built a community. But for that more, pure play investor who's looking for potential return, I think last year you had a little over $1 million in revenue. You're several years into this. You're starting to do some bigger projects. But I think something that maybe people who don't play in the media space very often maybe don't understand, that unlike a company, right, where it's like you have to generate sales every year in this company, movies and ownership rights in movies, this IP, intellectual property, what you create, actually has a value to it that continues to pay. Not necessarily, I mean, not for sure, right? It's not a guarantee, but if you're investing in really good IP and building great IP and have equity and ownership in that IP, over time, that could continue to pay very, very good dividends and payments and all of that going forward. So can you talk about how, you think about creating value within the Legion M portfolio of entertainment IP that you're creating?
Yeah, 100%. We've gotten to a really, I think, interesting point in the company's history, because like I said, for the first, 6, 7 years, we were mostly making investments in other people's projects. And so we have stakes in a lot of those projects. And like you said, that accrues over time, right? We've got royalty streams coming in, from these projects. But ultimately, because of the fact that we were making small investments in other people's projects, we viewed a lot of those projects as the economics of these projects don't really matter that much, right? It's really about how it allows us to get to the next stage. How can we get from just an idea to we are financing, producing, and distributing films of our own? And so the point that we're at right now is, I mean, the way that I would explain it from just to break down the unit economics is that when you invest in a movie, then the revenue comes into the movie, and then that revenue ends up getting divvied up to all the different people. It's called the waterfall. And it's this hugely complex thing, because movie deals are almost always really complicated, with a lot of different people who are investing under a lot of different terms. And there's people that are getting low percentage returns, but are, the first money that comes back in. And then there's people on the other end that have the most risk, but also have the most upside. So, if you invest in a movie that doesn't do well, you want to be one of those first people up there, because at least you're going to get something back, and it's not going to make, it's not going to be a home run, but you're going to make money on it, or you're going to get your money back. If you have a movie that turns out to become like a franchise, you want to be the person at the bottom of that waterfall, because now you own a piece of this, and the sequels and all that sort of stuff, that is now part of your domain. So they're kind of fundamentally different positions. But no matter what position you are, you're just in line, right? Legion M has now grown to the point now that we own these movies, that when the movie makes money, it all comes to us. And then we're the ones responsible for divvying it up amongst all the different partners. So even if you have like a movie that were to do the exact same thing, right? As far as like, oh, this is what it did, and this is how much Legion M is kind of going to get in profit out of it. Just the fact that we own the asset means literally like an order of magnitude or more in revenue that's coming in. Not necessarily profits. I mean, that's going to depend on how well it does. And so that's kind of the interesting inflection point that we've gotten to. There's also business models, like when you look at the economics of Hollywood and all that stuff, there's kind of the sell side, which is film production. I'm going to create movies and I'm going to try and sell them to the marketplace. And then there's the buy side, which is distribution. And those are the people that buy the movies. So in the case of my Dead Friend Zoe, our distributor on that one is Briarcliff. So Legion M produced it. Briarcliff is releasing it and distributing it. And there is power in both of those business models. But the Shatner one was the first one that Legion M released ourselves. And distribution is an extremely powerful position to be in. Ultimately for us, we feel like we want to be on both sides of it, right? Because it's a marketplace just like everything else. I'll tell you right now, actually, you don't want to be on the producer side of it right now because the marketplace is flooded with content and, the values that you can get are low. It's a buyer's market. But I mean, that's where we are in 2024 in September, and that'll change over time. And if you look at all the major studios, they all have production and distribution capabilities. And that gives you enormous power because, I mean, at the very least, you can produce something. And if you don't find a buyer that you like, you can just release it yourself. But it also means that when it's a seller's market, you can be a seller. When it's a buyer's market, you can be a buyer. And so that's the kind of way that we view the business. And we have just now gotten to the point where all of those things are possible. So it's like really the way that I see it is like our revenue to date. And if you read our SEC filings, we are very upfront about this. We are not a company that is focused on trying to maximize revenues and drive revenues. We're trying to build our community. We're trying to level up. We're trying to build what we think are going to create long-term competitive advantages. But I think that we're just kind of at that point where that's shifting a little bit. And now it is very realistic. And we are talking a lot more about revenue targets and what are we going to do with revenue and what projects are we going to do. And so, the last thing that I'd say about the movie industry is that some businesses scale like a lemonade stand where it's linear. You got a product. It's great. Let's make more of it. Let's expand, but you've got kind of this steady march of upward revenue. Entertainment, I think, scales a little bit more like trying to become a Major League Baseball player, right? You can make an ungodly amount of money if you're a successful Major League Baseball player, but that doesn't mean you can make anything if you are less, if you're partway, if you're in the triple A's, if you're, an amateur, like that sort of thing. And I think that Hollywood is very much like that. It's a hit driven business. And at the end of the day, there's, the realm that we're in right now, which is, smaller independent films and kind of maybe the $5 to $10 million, like that's not a super lucrative business, right? But for us, it's like, okay, well, this is the next step that we've got to build to the point, where we can get to doing $10 million to $20 million and $20 million to $50 million. And so, once you start getting at that level, I think the economics start working a lot more in your favor. And B, you're just one hit away. I mean, honestly, if you look at most major Hollywood companies, including Netflix, by the way, like there are a lot of people in entertainment that say, had Netflix not had House of Cards, they might not be Netflix as we know them today, right? Like that hit is what drove that whole next phase of their development. And now they're the most powerful company in Hollywood. But take that out of it, and it might be a completely different story.
So if we look at, you're releasing literally your first two movies that you've kind of financed through in the next 6 to 7 months. So 2025 could be an inflection point year in the next step where it goes from, hey, you're hanging around $1 million. Now you're doing many millions, I imagine, in 2025. But also you're taking that next step as a business. You're releasing two of the first films you've ever made through and through. what is that next step? Is it just you go from an independent film to a bigger production film, or what does it look like, do you think?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, I think we're still, I mean, independent film is kind of like a pretty broad swath,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. And you can do very well in independent film.
Yeah, well, yeah, and there are some notable companies like Blumhouse is one that makes independent films, although they've got really more like studio grade distribution, and distribution is really the key to the whole thing. And like that's where we've put a lot of our effort and our focus on as we grow as a company. I think that's where we're looking to grow. So, I mean, as far as like revenue, like you said, we are gonna. It's funny. My Dead Friend Zoe literally just shifted last week. They moved the release date, and it was going to be November, and now it's going to be February. And I mean, it's for the best. It's for the movie. Like that's, but it does mean like from a financial standpoint, it's like, okay, well, we've moved 2024 revenue into 2025. Before that happened, I think that we were probably on track to maybe double or triple. And I don't want to make any promises. These are just off the cuff numbers. We're going to be releasing our semi-annual report soon, and so we'll have it. But yeah, I think we're at a point where we are the potential inflection point for revenue is here, because that's what's going on with those films. But like I said, we're a hit away, right? So our William Shatner documentary, we created that, we produced it, we financed it. It sold out in 4 days on WeFunder, and a big part of the reason going in was because of the fact that we thought that this was a home run opportunity, right? To have someone of William Shatner's gravitas and magnitude and impact on pop culture aboard on a movie that we could finance entirely from our community for less than $1 million seemed like a winner. There was a few years ago, Amazon bought the Val Kilmer documentary. I don't know if you've seen that. It's called Val. And that one got bought at a film festival for $15 million. Right. And it's the reviews, if you look at the reviews, roughly comparable. It's not like that's an astronomically better film than ours. It's not like, I don't think that Val Kilmer is astronomically more famous than, William Shatner. But I think their timing was a lot better. I think that, because they sold that, like I said, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, back when things were sizzling hot, and particularly in documentaries. And anyway, and ours didn't do that. It didn't sell for $15 million. Had it sold for $50 million, our revenue would have gone from 1 million to 15 plus million. But that's at this point, the way that we see it, it's about taking quality swings at quality pitches. And that can be on both the production side as well as the distribution side. And so that's what's exciting. Like, I think when we look at like, what is our goal? What are our goals for 2025? We want to produce a couple films, but we're also at a point now where we can buy films at film festivals, and we can find finished films that we think have a place in the market, and start to leverage all of these things that we built out that with this William Shatner release, so that we can release films and make money that way as well.
Well, one more question for you, and then I'd love to get the final word from you as well. From a distribution perspective, the fact that you're about to hit 50,000 unique investors who have come in on your raises over the past 8 years, it certainly feels like things are also accelerating, right? Just in this round alone, I think you have over 16,000 investors.
Yeah.
So things are starting to compound even from a fan investor side of things. So as you kind of look at, the dollars going in, all of these things are really, really growing. What are some of the kind of, major key milestones and things that you're looking to do over the next kind of 6 to 12 months?
Well, I think, we want to close round 9 strong. So round 9 is on Start Engine right now, and it closes on October 11th. And this will be the last one that we do, at least in the near future, on Start Engine. So, we've done 9 rounds so far. The reason we break it into rounds, by the way, a lot of people ask us about this, is because it's the share price changes with each round. So literally, if you invested in round one, you're investing at, I don't know, it's like a half or a third of the price of the people that are investing in round nine. And we haven't set a price, we haven't set a date for round 10. I don't know what the terms of that would be, but every single round, the share price has increased, and that's a reflection of the progress that we and the company have made. And it also locks in, value for those early investors, because, no matter what happens, I mean, if we go out of business, all the stock will be worth zero and it won't matter. But any other scenario, the round one investors are going to do way better than the round nine investors. And, hopefully if we continue this march, the round nine investors are going to do way better than the round 10 or the round 15. And so, anyway, so we're, like I said, hitting the 50,000 investor threshold, I think, is important, just as a signal to the marketplace. I think we may go pursue some larger investors. I mean, up until now, Legion M has been entirely equity crowdfunded, and which is great, and it's wonderful, and it's what Legion M is all about. And we have not gone out ever to larger investors or hedge funds or private equity or venture capital or any of that. We've had a couple people come knock in and kick the tires a little bit, but again, we're a fan-owned company, and so our focus has been being owned by fans. And so that said, we're in a business that scales with not only people and the size of our community, but also money. And so we're at a point, I think, with 50,000 shareholders, and the way that we've been able to demonstrate kind of throughout the ecosystem the impact that having those investors make, that we can go out and raise some venture capital or some private equity or something like that, that will hopefully allow us to, boost our next phase of growth. And so aside from that, we're just going to be looking for more projects. We're trying to level up to bigger projects. In the early days, a lot of the stuff that we did was a little more niche, I would say, and a little bit, kind of funkier and that sort of thing. But I mean, my Dead Friend Zoe, that is and The Man in the White Van, those are extremely accessible, mainstream sort of movies. So, we're trying to level up to bigger things and more broadly interesting things, so that we can use that to grow our community. And that's really kind of where I see us focused. I mean, I feel like at the stage where we're spending a lot more time thinking about, okay, how can we get to liquidity for our investors? How can we get to profitability for the company? Like, there's no shortage I've seen of equity crowdfunded companies that have gone public. Most of them, from what I've seen, have been pretty disastrous, because I think that they're going public too early without kind of the proper fundamentals to support it. One notable exception, I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with Angel Studios by chance?
Sure.
So they're focused in the faith-based movie space, and they're a fascinating company, because they've also been around with equity crowdfunding since the early days. But they were a completely different company. They had like a video editing software that was designed to remove profanity from films so that you could watch them with your kids. And then they ended up pivoting, and they had a hugely successful series called The Chosen, which is all about the life of Jesus Christ. And it's a really well done. I mean, I'm not a person of faith myself, but or Christian, but I can tell you that it's a really well done series. And anyway, long story short, they just announced a few days ago that they are going to go public via a SPAC. At a $2 billion, or $1.6 billion valuation. And so I think that is, I mean, they're much bigger than we are as far as revenue and profits, but we share so much DNA, and I think that what they show is a little bit of what's possible for a company like Legion M.
From a distribution perspective, just with the size of your audience, does that help? Does that give you some level of scale or leverage with, being your own distributor, and the fact that you already have all these built-in fans who are behind the projects?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, it's one of the ways that I think a lot of people understand the power of Legion M. And to be clear, there are a lot of ways that being owned by fans helps Legion M. I mean, to start with, the fact that we've got people like, Dean Devlin, who's a billion-dollar producer, and William Shatner, and, literally 20 some executives on our advisory board that are current or former executives at big names like Lucasfilm and Sony and Amazon and that sort of thing. And the reason why all those people are part of it is because they believe in the fact that we're owned by fans. If Paul and I had just put out our shingle and said we're going to start a production company, there's no way that any of those people would be involved. So, we believe that being owned by fans allows us to attach the best talent to our projects. We believe that it greenlights things. I mean, it's, if you're a distributor, you're looking to buy a film and, all things being equal, you're looking at two films. And one of them's owned by a couple wealthy oil barons, and the other one, was financed by 50,000 fans. It's like, which one are you going to take, right? You're not going to take a bad movie over a good movie, but for comparable movies, of course, I'm going to go with this one. So I think that's just another example of an edge where we can put our finger on the scale a little bit. And even if we do everything just as well as, or about as well as everybody else, I think there's built-in competitive advantages. But when it comes to releasing and distribution, that's obviously one of the biggest ones. And the way that we see it, it's not about getting our community to come out. I mean, obviously that's important. But to be honest, if we have 50,000 people and every single one of them bought a ticket, that's still that's like $750,000 in box office. So that's a number. And it's, that's the difference between success and failure, frankly, for a lot of movies. But that's not what this is about. This is about how do we use our community as a lever so that they bring out their friends and family and they talk about it, right? People very rarely go to the movies alone. And so, we want to incent you as a Legion M investor to go out and talk to your friends about it. I mean, this is your movie after all. Your name is maybe in the credits, or this is something that you've been following along with since day one. And so when Shatner was the first film that we released ourselves. And that gave us so much more control, because when there's another distributor involved, there's so many different layers of the movie industry, and there's the theaters and the ticketing companies and the distributors. And it's just it's one of those things where it's really hard to move the needle when somebody else is doing the work, because, you just don't have the ability to implement the sorts of things that can actually move it. But when you distribute it yourself, suddenly now you've got all those controls. And with Shatner, that was a documentary, right? We released a documentary into theaters in 2024. And, no one is like, oh my God, that's what the movie industry needs, is more documentaries in theaters. Most people won't even release a documentary in theaters because of the fact that it's 2024 and documentaries are something you watch on Netflix. You don't go to theaters to see that. And so, but part of it was it was a nice, easy test case for us. And so, if you look at, I think last time I checked, we were the 7th biggest documentary in 2024. And, we did numbers that are pretty comparable for what, but the stuff that really worked was a lot of the Legion Emmy stuff. We had tickets that were on sale. You could buy a ticket even before we knew what theaters it was going to be at. We built these special packages that allowed you to buy 6-packs of tickets and get extra perks. And we rolling red carpets, where we took what is traditionally a Hollywood red carpet and we took it to cities across America. And so it was really, for us, a lot of it was testing and learning and figuring out, so that as we do these upcoming films, and both of these 2 next films, they have third-party distributors, but because of the fact that we've done some of this stuff, they're now working with us to integrate that into their release plan. And ultimately, when we get, when we look at 2025, I would hope that we end up with titles on our slate that we can distribute ourselves and just continue to build out that capability.
You guys have taken this from an idea and a piece of paper to something with 50,000 backers, a ton of incredible IP and upcoming projects and movies you're fully producing. And it's pretty incredible to see what you've all built. So congratulations on all your success to date. And with that, I will give you the last word here, Jeff.
All right. Well, I'll say two things. First of all, I want to say congratulations to you too, Chris. It's been wonderful to see King's Crowd develop from when it was just kind of like a gleam in your eye. And you, I think when we had our first interview back when you were just getting started. But to everyone else, I'd say, if you're interested in Legion M, come check it out. Just go to legionm.com. You don't have to invest. You are free to join as a free member. That'll get you on the list so you can learn all about the events that we're doing. We've got another William Shatner red carpet we're doing in about 3 weeks in Lexington, Kentucky. You can also, if you're interested, we're going to be open on Start Engine for a couple more weeks. But after that, it's come join the Legion. It's been a hell of a ride so far. Statistically, we should have gone out of business 11 times since now, right? I mean, we're a startup company, and we also survived a worldwide pandemic and strikes that fundamentally altered the landscape of Hollywood. And so we just keep on growing, and we feel anytime we go out there and talk to our community, it just gives us the strength and the power. We know that if we can continue, we've grown from an idea to a point where we can't be ignored. And we think that if we can continue that, we'll get to a point where we can't be stopped. And that is when, that is something of incredible value.
If you liked what you heard on the show today, you can check out why Legion M scored a 4.2 out of 5 at kingscrowd.com. You can now invest on Start Engine until October 12th, 2024. And please like, subscribe, and share our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, so more listeners like you can find us. Thanks for listening.